and then he'll present his session. Andi Mann.
Thank you. So I will absolutely show you my socks. These are my socks, courtesy of the DevOps Institute. These are now my new favorite socks ever. Thank you all for coming and joining us today. Thank you for coming along to the Devops Summit and to the CloudEXPO. I'm going to talk today about making data-driven decisions for DevOps. Now, I work for a company called Splunk. We do analytics around machine data to make that data available and accessible and useful for everyone in the organization. And so part of that is going and talking and learning about how different customers and different organizations are using data to make decisions in their DevOps practices. And that's what I'll talk about today. If you'd like to hit me at any point, my Twitter handle is up there, my email address is up there. I have no gatekeepers. I will be the person receiving any messages. So if you've got any questions afterwards or any comments, or if you'd like to tweet about today, please go ahead. Hashtag DevOpsSummit. So firstly, the problem that we're facing is that the development lifecycle is quite complex. It's gotten more complex as we've adopted things like agile technologies and DevOps. Historically, in a waterfall mode with a monolithic development environment, it was all sort of together. And you would have separate people doing QA maybe, but for the most part it was one system. Now we have in DevOps this idea of a loosely coupled tool chain. We have this idea of empowered developers choosing the tools they want. So within any organization, you may have not just many different phases in the delivery lifecycle, but also many different tools even within just one phase of that lifecycle. One department, team, application, group might be using one kind of tool for build, and a different team is using a different tool for build, for example. Which is actually really good because it makes sure that the developers who are doing the work and the QA people and the operations people who are doing the work, they're doing it with the tools that make them work better. And so it's important, this choice of tool is actually an important part of DevOps, enabling people to do what they want to do, to communicate and collaborate together using the tools that they want to make them more productive. That's great. But it does set up a significantly more complex environment for development. Now, interestingly enough, it flows in through to operations. Now, this is actually not even that new. In operations, it's always been a very complex environment because in IT, we're really good at adding new technologies. We're really bad at taking them away and retiring them. And so we started with mainframes and distributed systems and desktops and web, and now we're cloud and containers and serverless, all through the network, through the storage. More and more options continue to get added to our environment. So the operational environment is also very complex. And then you can put those two together, and that's DevOps. It's right there in the word, dev and ops together. And that's even more complex, but then you look at all of the people involved. And DevOps is fundamentally about people. So from the business through areas like the project management office, development, QA, the security team, because DevOps doesn't really start with dev and it doesn't really end with ops. It does involve a lot of other teams there. And so you overlay this all together, and this becomes a very complex environment where it's very difficult to see what's actually going on. Individual practitioners diving deep into one of these tool sets or one of these functional areas has good visibility in their own mind, in their own lane. But DevOps is about collaboration and sharing and communication. And so all of these teams are going to try and see into everyone else's work, but it becomes incredibly opaque. And so it's difficult to control, you lose time, things get lost through the cracks, bad releases end up in front of customers, all sorts of stuff can go wrong, and it costs you money as well. The one constant from all of these bits and pieces, from every tool in the chain, from every environment you're operating, whether it's cloud, on-premises, off-premises, whether it's serverless, API-driven architectures, third parties, your cloud provider, partners, others, and of course all of those individual tools in that complex chain, they all emit data. They're all saying at any given time what's going on, what they're doing, what went wrong, if only you can find that data. So what data actually makes a good decision in a DevOps workflow and a DevOps approach? Well, this was a seminal classic from Velocity 2009. John Allspaw and Paul Hammond, two sort of luminaries in the DevOps space, very, very early on produced this presentation when they were at Flickr. 10 deploys a day, well, 10 plus deploys a day. So is deployments per day, is that actually a good metric? Is that good data? You know, Amazon, by the way, is doing upwards of 10,000 deploys a day. So this has really moved on since then because of automation and other things. But this is the good question. What data drives good decisions? Now, if anyone remembers the classic documentary Office Space, this was a movie. It's of course not a documentary. It is a comedy about working in IT. And there's this character, Milton. And Milton actually got laid off, but he doesn't really know because Milton's busy. He's always busy. He's always doing something. Turns out what he's doing is actually not that important for the company. But he's busy. He's really busy. I'm working super hard. He's also working super hard to retain that red swing line stapler you see on his desk there, a pivotal moment in the movie. So do we measure activity? Maybe, but then you've got the pointy-haired boss guy. In the movie, it's called Lundberg. And he just cares about outcomes. You know, what are you actually achieving? And if you don't achieve what he wants you to achieve, he's going to make you come in on Sunday. Now, just to update that a little bit for the current generation, this is another documentary about our world. It's called Silicon Valley. It's on HBO. The first few times, it is, again, a comedy written by the same guy, incidentally enough, as Office Space. First couple of times I watched this show, I'm sitting there going, well, this is not funny. This is just my life. But they amped it up a little bit and it got pretty hilarious. And this was a classic scene where the four key stakeholders in this small startup were trying to figure out whether they had the right metrics. And so you've got on the very right-hand side the CTO and the CEO and founder, the technology expert. He thinks it's really awesome because he's got a lot of users. I mean, the lady on the right-hand side thinks it's great because of the installs. Lots of people have installed. The guy who's running the incubator, the curly-haired guy second from left, he thinks it's downloads. And then the guy on the very left, he's the big money man, he's the VC guy, he thinks sales. Now you think about those different metrics. Downloads, that sounds really good. Lots of people are downloading my software. But you know what? If they never install it, then what does it matter? But so lots of people are installing my software. But you know, if they never actually use it, again, does it really matter? Then you've got people using your software, lots and lots of people using it. But you know what? If you're never selling it and making money, it's probably not sustainable. So these aren't the right metrics either. Here are some DevOps metrics that might matter. This is based on the research I've done. I'll show you a bunch of sources and source documents later on today. But I'll take you through them one by one. Just quickly, culture is very important. Culture is the heart of DevOps. DevOps requires you to do new things in new ways, to collaborate and communicate and work together. Now, if you're a leader trying to foster a collaborative environment in your organization, how do you measure that? How do you measure whether you're doing the right job, whether your people are communicating and collaborating with each other? Well, here are some things you can measure. Staff retention. If people keep leaving your company, chances are you're setting up some kind of bad environment, maybe a toxic environment. Employee satisfaction. So companies like Etsy actually have, they're actually IoT buttons, in keeping with the themes, the broad themes of our conference this week. The IoT buttons are happy face and frowny face. And the developers actually can press those buttons whenever they come into work and whenever they leave. And so that data is aggregated and anonymized, but it gives you a really good idea of whether your staff are sort of happy or not. You'll see these buttons in a lot of airports and other places where you can literally just walk past and hit a button and go, yes, I was happy with my experience. No, I was unhappy with my experience. You've seen them online occasionally. Office 365 had them at one point where you could say, yes, I enjoyed this feature, no, I don't. You see them in user ratings all the time. You see it in Uber and Lyft. So why not apply it to your own staff? Call-outs is another indicator of culture. If I'm getting developers out at 3 o'clock in the morning every day for days or weeks at a time, that's a horrible work-life balance for them. So your cultural impact is very negative. So these are some metrics you can think about. Process is important. How do things actually flow through a pipeline? How fast are you at getting an idea from some of your business leadership and actually making it available to customers as a product that's supported by technology? That idea to cash life cycle. Mean time to repair. Mean time between failure as well. Delivery time. How fast are you at delivering? How good is your process? You look at quality. Test pass, test fail, code coverage rates, best and worst teams, best and worst applications. This gives you a really interesting idea of whether you're doing good work, whether your teams are doing good work. You can then start to look at rebalancing, education, mentoring, and so forth. Looking at systems is really important. So especially from the operational side, when you talk DevOps, thinking about things like throughput, uptime, availability, response time, latency, lag. These are all metrics that are available from the data delivered by systems. The activity, I mock Milton a little bit, right? He's focused on activity and he's busy, but it's really all about his stapler. And yet, if you never do anything, then nothing is ever done. And so activity is actually still really important. So are you doing enough commits? Are you running enough testing? How many releases are you able to get out in a day, a week, a month, a year? These are really important metrics when you think about DevOps, because partially DevOps is about delivering better software faster. There's a lot more to it, and I'm not going to get into definitions, but that's a pretty important part of why we do DevOps. And finally, the impact, and I want to stress this, the business impact that your delivery cycle has. If you're delivering software really fast, all your people are really happy, the systems are always up and available, but you have no customers, or you're causing customers to drop away from your experience, then that's actually a negative, regardless of how good you are at it. So you need to make sure that you're doing the right thing for your business, for your agency or a department. So some of the things there, sign-ups, if you're a for-profit organisation, things like revenue. If you're a not-for-profit or a government institution, then looking at things like customer service and service levels and throughput. These are really important. So I want to take you through some ideas about how you use some of this data. Now, every individual stakeholder, I won't read the screen, you're already reading it, I know. Every specific stakeholder wants to know some deep interest in their own siloed function. Now, DevOps is very much about breaking those silos and sharing information across boundaries. So yes, you do get individuals, say, in the business who are looking at time to deliver, time to cache, ROI, right? But they also care about other things like uptime and availability, about remediation time or process time, because that tells them how fast you are. It's a proxy for how well you're servicing customers. Your business leaders need to know about that. Then you think about, for example, security team. Yes, they want to know deeply things like remediation time, code quality, identity and access rates, because they're security relevant topics in that domain of expertise. But they also want to know some other things, like who's doing manual builds. That could be an indicator that someone's doing something outside of process because they're doing something nefarious. Or maybe it just opens them up to do something that's not being audited by the automation systems. Or maybe it's just that it is not a known good process. They want to know about unplanned work, because again, that could indicate someone's doing something that's not on the plan. Why are you doing that? It could be accidental, it could be a bug fix, it could be something important, but it could also be some nefarious action. Similarly, you look at the operations team. Yes, they're focused on the operational environment, uptime, availability, response, resource utilization. But you know what? They want to know about code quality because that helps them prepare for the next release. They want to know about exception counts because they want to have a say in whether that's a good release or not. Because DevOps is about collaboration and communication. So there's different data for different stakeholders, but there's also shared data across multiple teams. So we did research recently with Computing UK magazine and looked at what metrics are important. And we drew out some interesting conclusions. Firstly, the number one in terms of who has adopted DevOps is speed of application delivery. So we're doing DevOps because we want to go faster. Now, using metrics, you can do that because you can start to automate the process of understanding whether you're doing good work. So you can look, for example, at delivering code continuously to the marketplace. You can see whether it's being used. You can look at the quality of that code. You can run it through an automated cycle, knowing that you've got gates when they're necessary, but when they're not necessary, then the automation can take and flow through because you're using machine data to track the process. You're using it to track whether you're doing good releases. You're using it to track whether customers are happy. And so you can let this process cycle quickly. And that helps you improve speed of delivery. Also, as a nice side effect of the automation in DevOps, your auditors become very happy because automation does two big things for auditors. One, it audits everything that happens. So whenever automation tools do work, they spit out log messages saying what they've done and probably things like who asked them to do it. So there's a great audit trail there. The other thing that automation does for auditors is it makes sure that there is a known good process. And so the ideas of control and known process are really important to auditors. And so it takes away that anywhere from, an hour, 5 hours, 3 weeks, a month, compiling audit reports. The second, so we see this, by the way, one of my customers is Tesco, a big supermarket in the UK. They're doing things to speed up their delivery cycle. Using DevOps and using machine data, they're able to look at and find problems faster. This is another thing about machine data, log files, all this data you can see in the operational environment helps you find and fix problems really quickly because you're not spending hours grepping through logs. You actually find the problem straight away. So Tesco's doing this, cut their investigation and resolution time by 95%, reduced escalations by 50%, accelerated development by 30%. So Tesco, using data, is able to go faster. The second major area in the Computing UK study that we found was about quality. So the quality of application code reflects on your business, it reflects on whether your customers are going to want to do business with you, and more. And so, again, data can help you improve the quality of code. Using things like automated testing, running through that white box testing, the static analysis of whether my code is compliant, it's up to the right governance features, it's got no unterminated SQL statements, the compliance of the code itself. Not talking about the functional aspects of the application yet. You can start to look at whether you're delivering good code or not. Then you can automatically pass it through to the next step, or if it's no good, return it back to the developer who wrote it. So why are you doing code reviews when your automation could be telling people to go and just fix the code? You shouldn't have to have people slowing you down until they're needed. With this sort of automation, you can send it through the pipeline automatically and quickly, but still maintain that quality assurance that you need. Similarly, into the black box testing, stand up the application, build it, stand it up, throw testing at it. That's functional testing, potentially security testing, DDoS testing, penetration, all sorts of other quality tests. Again, the testing tools, if you're using automated testing tools, will tell you the results. And you can then get that data, correlate it, aggregate it, and visualize it, and understand, is this a known good release or not? And again, you can do it automatically. So not just better, but also faster. So we see, for example, NBC Universal doing some really powerful work there. So what NBC does, this is such a cool idea. They take 10% of their production server farm, and that's what they use for pre-prod staging. So they take it offline, they multi-home the traffic, so it's on a different net, but getting production traffic. 90% of the server farm at release time, it's overnight, so this is all their properties online, by the way, the online video, the news site, all this sort of stuff. Mission critical for that business. 90% of their server farm in a less busy period is enough to respond well to those customers. But they get to take that other 10% and trial the new release against real production traffic on real production servers. And so they call this their gamma environment, alpha, beta, gamma. And they can tell side by side, they can look at response time, throughput, latency, utilization of resources, failures, error messages, and compare side by side the known good release in production versus the now next release that's going to be released. And they get a really strong view there, side by side. There's no arguments. It's not like, well, I feel like this is going to be a good release. I think we're ready to drop. The data's there. I'm getting better response time, fewer errors, passing more throughput. This is a good release. Very powerful. The third and final area I'll talk about in terms of this research is that last thing I mentioned on the DevOps metrics. Are you having an impact on your business goals? And so we can see that the data-driven feedback loops of DevOps help you improve continuously, and not just improve your process or your ability to deliver software, but your ability to service your end customer. Sometimes that's internal, sometimes that's external. So this is a dashboard from one of our systems that shows a website, an e-commerce site. And so you're able to see cart check-in, cart abandonment, cart fulfillment. And you're able to see even down to things like revenue, because this is all being generated by your website, and you're able to access all of this data. So why wouldn't you then feed that back through to operations and development teams and show them what the impact of their work is? And if anything's going wrong, they can then start to use this kind of data to drill down and find out which application or which service is affected. Is it a priority service? As an operator, I'm more likely to want to attend to downtime on my order entry system than downtime on my staff holiday booking system, right? Understanding context becomes really important when you're using data. So a customer that does this is a gaming organization that I've worked with. They actually have in their developer room 4 screens one screen with 4 numbers they care about. They care about users signing up, users cancelling their subscription, amount of money bet, amount of money paid out. This is what the developers care about, right? Because that's what the business cares about. So being able to share these metrics enables this company to deliver a better service, to respond to problems faster, to deliver the best possible code, and know that that code is making a difference to the bottom line of their business. But the data itself is not enough. I mentioned you've got to have context, for example, but also how do you see the data and how do you get meaning from it? And so look at this data. This data is telling you something. It's sort of hard to tell what it's trying to say because it all just looks the same. So this data is telling you exactly the same thing. But now I can actually see lots of green boxes. I'm thinking that's probably good. And I can see what these different numbers mean in context of a service, of the delivery of software through the pipeline. Then you look at this one. So this is showing you a failure. Can we detect the failure? Can you read the failure? I can see a couple of things that might be a failure. But then if you actually visualize it, now our traffic lights are really glowing, and I can see there's something wrong in our build cycle. Bright red, numbers gone to 0, downward arrows, all these things hit me without me having to think about what's happening. So, how about that? Can you see the failures in that display? Again, traffic lights, very straightforward, but you can visualize it, you can see it. How about that? Big red X's. That's probably a problem. I think I've probably got a couple of problems there. Even orange exclamation marks. Visual cues. Data itself is not enough. Context, visualization. Again, can you see where the failures are now? If I gave you a longitude and latitude and a response time number, would you even know where that was or if that response time was good or bad? But showing you a visualization lets you respond faster, including to quality issues. So, just to wrap up, Three key areas that I think are important to follow when it comes to data-driven decisions to drive better DevOps outcomes. The first is about velocity. How do you use data to improve your velocity? Look at the data around your pipeline, around your activity, around the quality failures, around error counts, and see what the impact is on your ability to deliver software using a DevOps process and an agile mindset. Look at how you're able to fix problems faster, how you're able to make sure that things don't slip through the cracks in that very complex delivery lifecycle. Look at improving quality. And again, getting data from test automation systems, from test scripts, getting data out of QA teams and QA reporting, correlating it, aggregating it, visualizing it, you will be able to see whether you're putting out a better release or a worse release. And you can always do those sorts of things, as NBC did, to do that pre-prod comparison, using data to make a go, no-go decision rather than put your finger in the air and see which way the wind is blowing. And finally, make sure you're using data to measure the impact you're having on your organization. Whether it's for profit or for service, doesn't matter. You've got goals. You've got things you're trying to achieve as an organization. The data will tell you if you're achieving it. Oh, and by the way, once you get to this point, you can uplift that data and expose it to other people like your CEO, your CMO, your head of sales, because it's the same data that they want to see. Are you having an impact on business goals? So I do have some sources. This slide presentation is available online. It will be available on the CloudEXPO DevOps Summit website. But just so you know, all of the resources, all of the survey data that I put out there today is available on this slide. I would also please, my one shameless plug today is that I would ask you to go to splunk.com/DevOps and review some of the content there, including those 3 case studies that I mentioned, a lot more detail there as well. That's all from me today. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the summit.